Hello, welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Cott, and I am joined by the one and only, back from his travels,
Oof.
Keith Jackson. How's it going?
I'm tired, Daniel. I'm not going to lie to you. Energy levels are low. That was an interesting journey home yesterday involving cancellations, delays, missed flights, road trips, all sorts. So a day that began at 8 o'clock in the morning with a road trip from Hungary to Austria, which then got complicated when we got a flight from Graz in Austria to Germany, Munich. When we arrived, there had been delays to that flight. The Edinburgh flight we were supposed to catch, I think, was cancelled. We ended up having to scramble around, fly from Munich to Frankfurt, and then from Frankfurt to Glasgow. And we get into Glasgow the back of 11 last night, having set off at 8 o'clock in the morning. So long days, Dan, long days. It's not all glamour, you know, son.
I'm sure it was all made worthwhile with that Scotland win.
Well, yeah. And you know, pleased with the performance. Delighted with the points return of 4 from 6. Gives us a real shot in the arm going into a Hampden doubleheader next month with Greece and Belarus. You're expecting 6 from 6 against Belarus. If we can beat the Greeks, Dan, in that first game at Hampden, we are so close. We are so close. And I know there's a bit of apathy towards it. That's certainly the feeling I've been getting on you know, while we were away. But I think it'll start to come to the boil for that doubleheader, Dan, because, you know, it is a World Cup after all.
I think, you see, even if we draw against the Greeks at home, I mean, it's not that bad. Like, keeps it alive, if you know what I mean. It's not.
You want to win your home games. If you're going to qualify for this, certainly if you want to win the group and qualify automatically, directly, you want to win your home games.
Aye, and they're very good.
So, you know, and look, you know, I think that was a bit of a freakish result that Denmark got on God, when was it now? Where are we?
Monday
night. Yeah. But you know that I think Steve Clarke will have a plan devised particularly for that match. And if we can, I fancy us. I think if we can take 6 points from these two games, wow, we're really close.
Aye. Well, look, we talked a lot about Scotland and the 2 brilliant performances last week, or sorry, on Monday as well. But club football's back, Keith. The Premiership.
The red meat returns.
Exactly. It's ready to return. I know it's Wednesday and the football's not back till Saturday, but it's a huge week in the Premiership. And I think the headline billing is obviously Rangers against Hearts. Honestly, I can't wait for that game. I think it's going to be so intriguing.
Do you know what, Daniel? Even before a ball is kicked this weekend, there's intrigue, there's drama, there's box office. Because both Russell Martin and Brendan Rodgers need to sit down and speak to the media, and it's not going to be an easy ride for either of them. You wouldn't imagine. The Brendan Rodgers thing is going to be fascinating. How does he front up the kind of chaotic nature of the last week or so? The failure of Celtic's board to provide him with the players that he was hoping to sign, the fact that he's come out the window weaker than he went into it, and of course, no small matter of the nameless statement, and this Celtic source claiming that Brendan Rodgers is in fact the guy that's causing the problems, and he's trying to undermine the club and find. So yeah, there's when it all kicks off. It all kicks off probably over Thursday and Friday. I'm not sure the exact details of the pressers, who's doing what when. But I think over Thursday and Friday, both of the Old Firm managers will be up in front of the cameras and the reporters, and they've both got really difficult sort of press conferences to navigate their way through, even before we start looking at what the action looks like.
Yeah.
Rangers at home, Hearts, 3 o'clock on Saturday. Russell Martin, I don't know if he can afford another slip-up. And Hearts are absolutely flying under Derek McInnes, 6 points clear of Rangers, joint top with Celtic. And Rangers go into that game, and on the evidence of what we've seen so far this season, would you fancy Rangers to win that game? I don't.
No.
I wouldn't. If anything, I'd be betting on a Hearts win if I was a betting man. And I probably think that the worst result that Derek McInnes and Hearts will take away from Ibrox this weekend is probably a draw. And if Rangers were to draw that, that'd be 5 straight draws, no wins, and I think the pressure would be piling on Russell Martin at that point. So, as ridiculous as it may sound, so early into his first ever season as the Rangers manager, after 5 games, he could be at maximum point of danger in terms of his job credentials. So that's huge. And if it was anybody else in the league coming to Ibrox, you'd still think, well, you couldn't be convinced that Rangers will deal with that because you saw what happened when Dundee visited. But this Hearts side and the momentum that they're building early in the season under Derek McInnes, I think it's a really perilous looking afternoon for Russell Martin. The flip side of that coin is if he can get a win, then he cuts the gap between Rangers and Hearts to 3 points, and also Celtic for at least 24 hours or thereabouts, because Celtic have got to go down to Kilmarnock, which is a notoriously difficult venue for them. And they do so against this chaotic backdrop of everything that's been going on between Brendan Rodgers and the board, and the supporters are in full-scale revolt. So, the flip side of everything that I've just said for Russell Martin is if he can beat Hearts, then wow. All of a sudden, that's eating into the gap between him and Derek McInnes, first and foremost, but secondly, really putting a bit of pressure on to Celtic at a moment in time when they're at war internally. So, I have not got a clue what we're about to witness over the next 3 or 4 days in general, Daniel. Whether it's the press conferences, whether it's off the pitch, on the pitch. But I tell you what, you're not going to be able to take your eyes or ears off it.
It won't be boring. We've already got comments coming in, and if you're watching at home and you want to get involved, please do so. We'll try and read it out. Rangers Easy OK says, Asgard, Raskin and Cornelius all showing up for the national teams, all in Russell Martin now. He said a few times the squad and paper looks strong. Have to beat the 2 capital clubs over the next couple of weeks. Otherwise, time is up. Russell, this one as well, which thought Stephen saying Nuno to replace Russell Martin, which obviously reference to the Nottingham Forest manager who has been replaced by Ange Postecoglou yesterday. Mo says McInnes will be offered this job at half time. A lot of people
just switch dressing rooms at the break.
He's manager of the month, as you can see for that image as well.
Yeah.
John says a draw in Rangers v Hearts at Celtic. Chris is backing a Hearts win. But David thinks Hearts will roll over 3-0 to Rangers, and Mark is in the same thought. He says Hearts will Hibs it.
Well, we're on. Everybody's free to speculate and make their own predictions, as I have just done, so everybody else can. I think Rangers will have to have a really significant uptick in the levels of form if they're to come away with 3 points from that game. Nothing that you've seen thus far would lead you to believe that that's likely to happen. Now, I don't know what's been said during the international break. I don't know where Russell Martin's head's at. I don't think it was in a particularly great place going into the international break. But what he did say, Daniel, was, he was looking forward to the end of the transfer window just so they can have a bit of clarity and take away all the confusion and all the, is he going? Is he staying? Who are you going to get as a replacement if that one goes or this one goes? All that stuff has now been removed, and it should give Rangers a platform to kind of go again, to start over again, almost relaunch the season. So can they take it? What's happened? What have the conversations been like over the last 2 weeks? Where's Russell Martin's at? Where's his head at in terms of style over substance? Is he prepared to change his outlook on that, or does he die in that hill all over again? Because come what may, come the final whistle at Ibrox on Saturday, if he hasn't got a win, then he's in serious trouble. And is he prepared to sacrifice how he thinks the game should look in order to get the result? Because Rangers fans will take quite happily, I think, a kind of a grinding performance against Hearts. Nothing spectacular, nothing too fancy, so long as they get the result. And by result, I mean win.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I can say this quite safely. I'm not sure there are Rangers fans out there that would be happy to take a draw so long as it looked nice.
No, not at
So,
home.
so that's where we're at. So early in the season, incredible, and so much, still to be cleared up. The dust is settled at Rangers in terms of the transfer dealings. The dust hasn't settled at Celtic yet.
Yeah.
That's still a very foggy, confusing picture. And again, we'll get a better idea for what damage has been done during the course of the next few days. It's such a huge weekend so early in the season. It's only in Scottish football.
We've had plenty of comments coming in already about Brendan Rodgers and Celtic. We will get to them, but just while we're talking about Rangers, GM in the comments says, "Is there any truth to rumours that if Martin is sacked, Therwell will resign?" And obviously, who knows? You have mad rumours in Glasgow all the time. But I put that up, Keith, because huge for Russell Martin in his career, but also for Kevin Therwell. Really, I mean, and Charniti's debut as well.
That's an interesting question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the presupposition to that one would be, Thelwell's actually handing out a threat that he's saying, well, if you sack my man, then you'll need to, I'll be going too. I'm not sure that Kevin Therwell is on safe enough ground to be throwing down threats to anybody right now. If I'm Kevin Therwell, and he's already passed the buck and thrown the hot potato into Russell Martin's lap. He did that interview. You could quite clearly tell he didn't want to do it, but he felt the heat was on him and he felt he had to speak up. And when he spoke up, he basically pinned it all and Russell Martin said he'll need to do better.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin Therwell needs to do better. And he's in no position, by the way. This has been a really highly unimpressive start to his tenure as sporting director at Rangers. He's in no position to start throwing threats around. In fact, if I'm Andrew Kavanagh and I think, well, I could get a twofer here. If I could get rid of the manager and Therwell, then that actually might be. And remember what I've said, Daniel, for a long, long time now, and I know it gets boring, but I always said it was likely to get worse before it gets better. I'm not sure that Kevin Therwell has done, well, in fact, I was going to say I'm not sure he's done enough. He hasn't done enough and nowhere near enough. And everything that he has done has looked sketchy. In terms of the profile of the players that he's been determined to bring in terms of the arrogant streak that seems to be attached to it, in terms of if you've played in England for 2 minutes at any level, you come up here and walk it. The original appointment of Russell Martin. Kevin Therwell is right under the cosh already, never mind Russell Martin.
Mm-hmm.
There was a feeling, and I certainly had it before the international break, that Russell Martin's almost as good as a goner now. The question is, can Therwell survive? And if you do decide at whatever point this early in the season to make a call on the manager, do you entrust Kevin Therwell with the portfolio to then go and appoint the next guy? I'm not sure that you can. I think Kevin Therwell's been singularly unimpressive thus far. It's early days, but I'm not sure that he really gets it. And I think if he is to survive for the long haul, never mind threatening that you need to sack me, if he wants to survive this in the long haul, and I'm not sure, maybe he doesn't, maybe he's come in and he's been shocked by the size of the thing. And maybe that might be an easy ticket for him. He can get out of town and, get back down south where he feels more comfortable, whatever. I don't know, but the situation is already really messy, and it's only going to get messier if Rangers fail to get a win and a big performance on Saturday afternoon, and not just for Russell Martin. Kevin Therwell's decision-making will have to come under the microscope at the same time. Because there seems to have been this sort of attitude that we'll just go up the road there and breeze this. It's only Scottish football. We can reinvent the wheel up there. Nobody will notice. They don't get it. They don't understand how good we are. It has been an absolute bin fire so far. So I think this would be a really good moment for people like Kevin Therwell, like Russell Martin, to wind their own necks in a little bit. Look at what's happened over the first few weeks of this season, and then maybe make a recalibration to see, do you know what, we've actually got this spectacularly wrong. We need to make some changes. We need to have a change of attitude, and this is the way that it should be done going forward. If they can do that, then both of them might be safe.
Yeah.
But if they fail to do it, then I would say neither of them are. So that again, another fascinating strand. Who could have thought this early into this season? But with an American takeover and all the stuff that's come with it, that you're in this situation. I think the only thing mitigating circumstance where Rangers are concerned is it is all new. I did say it was going to take them time to understand the environment, even if they didn't realise that when they came in the door. And they'll need to learn as they go. It will be failure to learn as they go, which will be the costly part. And that does involve, I'm afraid, winding in the egos a little bit and being prepared to admit where you might have, made assumptions that weren't based on anything really more than just an arrogance in the first place. It's going to be really interesting to see as well, Daniel, the players that have been brought in, can they find their feet? That's really interesting that Asgard scored 4 for Norway the other night after coming off the bench. Raskin's situation, that needs to be clarified. Again, utterly fascinating. So much, Dan. And we're yet to see Kevin Therwell's £10 million Everton striker.
Well, in the comments, Paul says Therwell will be judged on the Chermiti transfer.
That's a big one for him.
Very big, right? William says, I lost all respect for Russell when we were gubbed in Bruges. He said his players never stopped running. Pure lies. Players were walking around the pitch. Under a Glass Metropolis says, anything less than a win on Saturday and Martin will be gone. And Harry says, see how good the Rangers players are on international duty when they don't play Martin's tactics. I think we've got some pics of them on international duty as well. Asgard, as you say, 4 for Norway, which isn't a bad going. And Derek Cornelius as well. Did you see his free kick for
it was a cracker,
Canada against Wales? So
it's going to have to try and get James Tavernier off them first.
It's a good point, but it's going to be, as you say, absolutely fascinating, particularly in that game on Saturday afternoon. By
the way, then the focus just shifts down the M77.
Yep.
Because you tell me Sunday's not going to be any more laced with interest. Of course it is. It's crazy that they really have managed to get themselves into quite a state, the two of them. And if you're Derek McInnes right now, you'd be sitting there rubbing your hands thinking, I wanted to get involved in a fight here. I wanted to be rolling around in the mud with these guys. Wow, I'm there already. Just a few weeks in, and he'll have been champing at the bit to get his players back out on the pitch and build on what they've achieved so early on this season, which looks to me like the throwing down of a significant gauntlet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a couple of people in the comments as well, Craig, saying, asking if Rangers been fined. They have been fined £20,000 for their pyro use in Bruges with a suspended 1 game away from home stadium ban.
It's just never going to. They're just never going to learn, are they? It's just madness.
Had to mention that. Back to the football. DP says Therwell will be just fine, like Rangers will. The transfers have been very good. Everyone takes time to settle.
That's an interesting take.
Aye, definitely. Although Marzino comes back and says, you're right, Rangers would never sack a manager in September, which is a funny comeback.
Do you know what's interesting? I mean, this would be different, obviously, because this is his first season. Usually, Rangers managers are given at least a campaign, or a 12 calendar month period. But I think that there will be people within Rangers just now in the hierarchy looking at this going, have we made a real bad blunder in the appointment of Russell Martin? If so, who's to cop the responsibility for that? Well, that's easy. It was Therwell and Greta Steinson of the 49ers who were in charge of the recruitment process. But I also think there would be a reluctance, wouldn't there? I'd be reluctant if I was in charge of a football club to be seen to be like panicked into making a knee-jerk reaction that, sacking a guy when he's hardly even get his feet in under a desk. And you certainly don't want to build a reputation for yourself as being those leaders, the guys that, because then it becomes really difficult to attract the next one in.
Yeah.
And I do wonder, Daniel, if it becomes a little bit less of an issue for them when you're looking across Europe, and Ten Hag's got the bin at Leverkusen, and Nuno Espirito Santo, sacked by Nottingham Forest, Big Ange got in there. So there is movement now. So Rangers wouldn't necessarily be something of an outlier, because other clubs are already making these decisions, making these moves, making a definitive on whether or not this season can recover from the start that has been made under the guy that's currently in charge. So yeah, that maybe made Rangers reluctant to go too soon on anything. But now when you look across and other clubs are doing it, and it starts to become more and more the norm, it could make that decision a little less difficult to make, simply on the basis that they wouldn't be the first ones to do it.
Aye. Well, I put a picture up there of Ange Postecoglou alongside with. Sorry, he was alone. Nuno and the Nottingham Forest manager. Just before we talk about Celtic, how do you think Ange will get on there? I know they're friends, Mavropanos, the owner, but I don't know.
Yeah, friends for the time being.
Exactly.
He doesn't seem to stay friendly too long with anybody, does he? And he seems to want to make it all about him, the owner. That'll be interesting to see if he's prepared to wind his neck in and let Ange get on with it, because Ange likes to be the kind of star of the show. There's no doubt about that. And he likes his football to be the main talking point. And he's not getting the advantage of a pre-season. You know how much change is involved in the implementation of Ange Ball.
Yeah.
Has he had the time to do that in the training ground? How will it evolve over the first few weeks of the season? The next few weeks of the season, given that he's not had time to lay down his blueprint properly. How will he do, Dan? I don't know, but I think it's going to be good fun to watch.
Aye, absolutely.
And I hope it, because I felt for him. I mean, he hit Spurs in the Premier League, like a sledgehammer when he first went down there, and it was amazing to watch. I think one of the biggest problems he's going to have is that they've got rooms full of backroom guys and coaches and analysts and all over the Premier League. Everybody's got, this huge database and boffins that put a computer code into everything and work everything out. I think what didn't surprise me about Ange was I thought his first kind of tour, if you like, the first sort of half season of fixtures, when everybody's facing it for the first time, I thought that he'd catch a lot of people by surprise, and he did, and that's why Spurs got off to such a brilliant start. I think he found the second round of fixtures a lot more difficult, because by then the whole thing has been put through a computer somewhere, and analysts have worked out, and these are really good coaches. These are obviously elite coaches, so they will sit down and look at it and say, right, this is what he's going to do. This is how we combat that. Now they've got a cheat code for Ange Ball already, because more or less all of them came up against it over the last wee while at Spurs, 2 seasons. So does that count against him? Because I don't see him changing his style all that much. I think he'll just try and do for us what he did at Spurs, which is what he did at Celtic, which is what he's done everywhere he's ever been in his career. But the managers down there that will come up against him, well, they've got the advantage of knowing what to look for and knowing what to expect and anticipate. So it could be really difficult right from the start for Ange this time.
I agree. I think it's going to be very interesting, as you say, though. We mentioned Celtic a little moment ago. Mark in the comments mentioned the Europa League tickets. Celtic's Europa League tickets went on sale today, or the packages were announced today. £35, I believe, for a home game. The home game's against Braga, Utrecht, Roma. Who's the other one? I'm sure I've got a picture of this somewhere. Sturm Graz.
Right.
Apparently, it's the cheapest in Britain so far of any European tickets. I mean, after the last few days, it would need to be for anyone to buy them.
I would guess that they've probably somebody somewhere in the room has been clever enough to say, look, guys, I think we've poked the bear in the ribs a bit too often here. We need to do something to kind of turn the temperature down. That's as good a thing as any, I guess. But also, I think they realise, Dan, that there are now organised campaigns being launched by the Celtic supporters. The Celtic supporters are getting militant. They're getting together. They know that they're going to have a hard task, attempting to get that stadium remotely close to being full. So the very least they can do strategically is to bring the price down and hope that, well, there's 5 Celtic supporters that under no circumstances will buy tickets for the Europa League. There might be another 3 or 4 who will and fall in behind and take up the slack. But they weren't going to do that by further antagonising them with hefty bills for these tickets. They were always going to have to go on the light side on that one, especially given the mess that they've created on their own doorstep over the last 10 days or whatever it's been, Daniel.
Aye.
Mental, isn't it? Crazy.
Aye, and the thing is, obviously, Europa League's coming up, but we've mentioned Rugby Park at the weekend. That's obviously first and foremost for Celtic. Before the international break, Keith, Celtic were 6 points ahead, or they are obviously, but it felt a lot more emphatic to me. All of a sudden, that 6 points doesn't feel that.
Well, that's what I said.
Anymore.
I said it the other night, and I don't even know if I made sense to myself. But the 6 points felt like a big 6 points. When Celtic left Ibrox and made their way back across the Clyde after that, the first derby of the season. And because of everything that's happened subsequently, it no longer feels like a big 6 points anymore. And that's such a weird thing to say, but I can sort of qualify it by saying, had Celtic come out of that window the way that I expected them to, stronger, more robust, more options, big signings, excitement levels growing, momentum growing, you just expect them to just go and stroll it from that point onwards. But they've come out completely the opposite. They've come out, backbiting, fighting, infighting. They've turned the fans against them. They've come out of it in a far worse place on all different bases and levels and metrics than they were when they went into it. So that 6 points is not the same 6 points as it was, as daft as that sounds, because you look at Celtic going down to Rugby Park against that backdrop, that anger, the hostility that's shown there, how the players going to react to that, how's Brendan Rodgers going to react to it, and that's going to be really interesting to see.
On top of that, Keith, they can't score a goal.
Yeah, exactly right, and they've done nothing to. Well, we'll need to see Iheanacho. Let's have a look. I'm sure Celtic fans will get the opportunity to see him for the first time at Rugby Park, whether he starts or comes off the bench. So let's see what Celtic look like. But if they're a mirror image of their manager, who has looked anything but satisfied over these last few days, if that rubs off on the players, will it rub off on the players? Is there going to be, the hostility from the stands? How does that impact? How does that manifest itself on the pitch? So many things to take into consideration. But would you really be surprised if Celtic did drop points at the weekend? I wouldn't. Likewise, I wouldn't be so surprised if they went down there 1-5-0 and everybody got their mojo back and Brendan Rodgers, has had a clear the air with the players and said to them, look, guys, you're the guys that are inside here. I've been disappointed. The whole club's in a bit of a mess. The board have let us down. But we've seen this previously with Brendan Rodgers. If you remember his final season, the first stint, which obviously he left early to take the Leicester position, but he left early knowing pretty well that the title was already done, and Celtic were, 4/5 of the way there to another treble. I know that Neil Lennon had to come in and steady things and get them over the line, but it was largely down to the work that had been done, and Celtic were flying at that period, and that was against the same backdrop of Rodgers and the board not seeing eye to eye, which ultimately is the reason that he found it easier to accept the Leicester offer. But even though he wasn't satisfied with what was going on in the transfer windows at that point, he was able to get the team into a place where they were really high on form and playing for each other and streets ahead of the rest. That could happen again as well. But these are all the imponderables, and we'll get our first indications as to what it's likely to look like on both sides over the course of the next few days.
You can see there, Paul, in the comments, says, Celtic get a good result, bag a few goals. Hopefully the last few weeks we can move on. I don't think that's the case. I don't know about you, but I think the feeling amongst fans is a lot deeper than just a normal
I agree with you. I agree with you, Daniel. But, fans are very reactive and reactionary. And they're also very fickle. That's just the way of the world. It's just a fact. So what I'm going to say to you is, and I get it, and I know what you're saying, but there's a bit of recency bias in that they haven't played a game since all this blew up. So the Celtic fans have been obsessing over it, and understandably so. Once the ball starts rolling, things tend to calm down, so long as the results and performances are there. If the results and performances aren't there, then it goes the other way. It gets even more hostile, more volatile. But here's a scenario for you, Dan, and honestly, I believe not all Celtic fans would be able to brush it all off and get back to business just as easily as this. But if Hearts were to go to Ibrox and win, and if Celtic go to Kilmarnock, score 4 or 5, and the lead over Rangers goes up to 9 points, I think a lot of the fury and the heat gets taken out of it. I do, because that's just football. And at that point, the team's clicking again. Oh, look what he's done. Oh, look, Ian Atchell looks as if he's going to be a major contributor. He scored a couple. And all of a sudden, you get through it. And Celtic have been in this movie on more than one occasion over the last few years. And more often than not, they've been able to recover, to get the results on the pitch, and everything around about them, the noise starts to tone down a little bit. That wouldn't be a surprise. But I do accept on this particular occasion, it does feel a bit different. And if for whatever reason Celtic can't get back up and running in terms of, keeping the wins ticking over and the points piling up at the top of the table, if for whatever reason there's a blip or a bad result or a slip up at Kilmarnock, as I said, it goes the other way. It dials up, not dials down.
Definitely. In the comments, Paul asks he says, Keith, I saw a report on Mikel Antonio possibly joining Celtic. Have you heard anything? Obviously, he's a free transfer after leaving West Ham.
No, I haven't. I'd be telling a lie if I said otherwise. I think what I would say is, if something like that was going to happen, you would expect it to be done around about the same time as Ian Atchell.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why would you be waiting till now? The window's long since shut. There's been every opportunity, and Brendan Rodgers, said going into the transfer window, the sooner I can get players in here to work with them, the better. Never mind after the event. So I've got the feeling that Ian Atchell will probably be it. But who knows? Who knows?
Mark in the comments is asking if you'll be at the Brendan Rodgers presser.
Mark, I would love to be at the Brendan Rodgers presser, but thankfully I've been allowed to take a bit of time off following my travels over the last week or so. So no, I'll be watching though with great interest on TV and watching Record Sport online. I'll be fascinated, but no, I won't be there, unfortunately.
Aye, we'll have it all covered, don't you worry, Mark.
We'll be there already.
I can put up just now a snapshot of the fixtures just to finish us off. Hibs Dundee United, that's a cracker as well, Keith. That's going to be really good. And also, Falkirk at home to St Mirren. I think that'll be a really good game too.
You don't need to look far for interesting games.
No.
And let's not forget Aberdeen-Livingston. Aberdeen at home, struggling so badly, did some really good work, impressive work in the transfer window just before it came to a close. But Livingston are such an awkward customer to deal with, aren't they? Mm-hmm. And Aberdeen, I like the work that they've done in the transfer market. I think they've got in some real quality. But I think I said on the show previously, Dan, I'm hearing that it's not a happy place. The environment isn't good. The dressing room, is in desperate need of something, and I'm just not sure about the relationship between the players and Jimmy Tillene. And if you're going in, even if you're a quality signing, you're going into a bad environment, it can be very difficult to turn it all around just on your own if there's other guys inside that dressing room who aren't in a great headspace. And I think that, from what I'm hearing, that could be the case at Aberdeen. So all the positivity from the good work in the transfer market might take a bit of a dunt this weekend if Livingston were to take something away from Pittodrie, and I wouldn't rule that out.
No.
You're right, Hibs and United, fascinating game. Hibs have been really impressive so far this season, as have United. And you'd expect that the two of them have certainly got their eyes fixed on top six finishes this season. So these games will be, a big part of that. I don't know if I would call that one right now. I'd say Hibs might nick it, but I think that
Tough.
might well have a draw written all over it, that match, because they both get really impressive parts to them, haven't they? Both in different strengths. They might kind of nullify each other in some respects, or not. It could be an absolute bonkers game with loads of goals. But you're right. I think it's certainly a game that will capture the imagination this weekend, because I think the supporters on both sides, for United, for Hibs, they're looking at this season now, getting really quite excited about the potential and the prospects.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned,
what else we got?
Well, what else should we talk about before
Falkirk St Mirren, did you say?
we wrap up? Falkirk St Mirren, I think, will be a really good game.
Yeah, and there too, you would look at this and you would automatically think they should be bottom six sides. And Falkirk are, they will take time to just find their feet in this division. But I think you saw in their opening game against Dundee United, they're just going to go hell for leather.
And one at Pittodrie as well.
Yeah. That was obviously a big win, and that might really help with their confidence. St Mirren are a top six side, traditional top six side when they shouldn't be, but they've made themselves that. So they'll give Falkirk a real. They're streetwise side, St Mirren, but Falkirk will just go hell for leather again. That could be a really exciting 90 minutes, a really good watch. Do you know what? As much as I am invested in Scotland, and I am really aware of how important these games are, and I'm desperate to see us get to a World Cup, but I must admit, the red meat comes back this weekend, Dan, and I can't wait for it. It's just going to be portion after portion of it.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. I kind of wish it was Friday night now after that, to be honest, but hey ho.
I got you going, have I?
As I mentioned earlier, we will be here to cover it all of the fallout on Record Sport Online and the Hotline Live too, to all of the weekend's Premiership games and all of the storylines revolving around them. But for now, I think that brings us to the end of tonight's show, Keith. It's a pleasure to have you back.
Good, I'm off to my bed. An early one.
Thanks very much for all the comments. As usual, we really appreciate it. We'll be back to do it all again at 6 p.m. tomorrow. We hope you can join us then.
Thanks everyone. Thanks, Dan.